I would like to make the presentation about the methods of network modeling using parallel hierarchical networks for processing data and reducing erroneous calculation risk. This work proposes a new type of parallel hierarchical network, a machine learning technology based on the completion of the G transformations. The network contains horizontal and vertical branches which create a hierarchical structure. Each vertical and horizontal branch undergoes G-transformation, which functions by calculating the differences of its elements at every step, and on selected elements. The selected elements are multiplied by the quantity of received non-zero differences. Elements calculated in this way present input data for further network transformation. The possibilities for computational facilities have reached that critical moment where theoretical and applied research have revealed constraints in their application for the solution of a number of serial arithmetic problems using computers of the first 5 generations. For the parallel processing of information, the concept of evaluational improvements in computing and microprocessing facilities have turned out to be non-efficient. Constantly changing requirements regarding real-time signal processing and operation rate of the equipment has shown the necessity of creating computational structures with new architecture, enabling the processing of numerous data arrays with a high processing rate. We can state that nowadays we are approaching a new and important stage in the development of engineering facilities intended for processing both one-dimensional signals and images. The progress of computational facilities comprises the evolutionary transition from conventional von Neumann computational structures to expert systems and intelligent neural engineering systems simulating the brain activity of human beings and the intelligent computational facilities of the sixth generation. The fundamentals of PHCS theory are based on learning and creation of mathematical models of pH transforms, writing, transmission, processing, and presentation of machine information. Initial is the following axiom. The set of analog operands as the measure of information is the most compressed form can be presented in the form of coefficients totality of parallel hierarchical decomposition, digitizing of which in IF of the area and strictly determined by the structure of pH network. Proceeding from the condition of reaching maximum possible fast acting of computational structures to provide the highest level of compression in combination with natural parallelism, the organization of such flexible, easily reconfigured networking algorithmic structure, the skeleton of which is strictly defined before. The requirements regarding similar networking structure they can find wide application in theory and practice of various branches of science and technology as universal tool for investigation of information fields, and include conventional, regarding software part, and non-conventional, including on the one hand requirements considering flexible reconfiguration of basic algorithmic structure for performing intellectual operation, pre-processing analysis and synthesis of information fields; on the other hand, engineering that realizes pH transforms, to find mathematically sustained connection between the quality of construed algorithm and architecture of PHCS with maximum possible efficiency of pH transform. We formulate the theorem of limiting compression of information. Theorem: for pH transform in condition of admissible choice of numerical information at each level of its processing, there exists minimum time of transform, where the amount of output coefficient of transformation with greatest probability means the requirements of ideal model. Let sub k, where k is 1, 2, etc., is the time of selection of random element from information array we denote by t sub n is equal to sub 1 plus 2 sub 2 etc. the time of selection of all the elements from input array of information. If the elements of input array of information are independent random values distributed according to a definite rule, then due to identify of operation performed in each cycle, T sub 1 and T sub 2 are equally distributed independent values. Query 1. The maximum speed of pH read-write of information is achieved by quantization of optimum criteria time by number of serially formed coefficients tail elements of pH transformation. Query 2. To achieve real-time scale at minimum complexity of parallel-hierarchical algorithmic and engineering facilities, the operands of numerical field must be written, storing and reading of impression is performed by means of pH codes. Non-serial logic time codes are codes oriented on achieving process on the basis of the method of pH transformation, and while maximum possible speed at minimal possible consumption of power for the preservation. pH codes for parallel writing reading of information are codes oriented at obtaining maximum possible compression and L-reading speed at minimum complexity of algorithmic facilities. Corollary 3. pH transformation allowed to realize the principle of distributed network in processing that is very important for realization of uniform neural-like computational structures. Special software, however, network M were a more or less uniform environment, as it's in classic form in acoustics and optics. Then we would deal with wave generated by point source. In case of N network, the situation will be different. If any non-zero elements propagating at great values differs greatly from the matrix of physical space in the network, then the results will be passages from one era into another and behavior will differ by far less regularity than phenomena of the wave type used in classical physics. That is why while modeling such processes, new approaches taking into account non-uniformities of network space are required. On structural level, the organization of cortex zones in the form of interacting neural networks can be presented as it is suggested on the figure first. Here, each layer of cortex zone is presented in the form of neural network as neurobiological process of hierarchically independent interaction of convergent-divergent structures. However, outputs of the neural network of the same name of the each of cortex zone form corresponding inputs for the next cortex zone. The term outputs of the name means the availability of multiple correlative processes of coincidence of these input signals in real-time neural networks are probably the ideal tool that can operate in a steady-state mode in conditions of uncertainty. Neural networks functioning on the principle of dynamic multifunctionality include interaction of convergent-divergent structures in horizontal and vertical direction and form 3D architecture. The structure of such interaction differs from similar ones, the path of horizontal roads, due to complexity of different schemes of convergent-divergent process vary change genetically and defined level. The path of these routes can slightly vary in the process of training. The example of semantic organization of this process is shown on this slide. 1 sub 1 this small object moves. 1 sub 2 speed up quickly. 1 sub 3 object has intended form. 1 sub 4 mainly of gray color. 1 sub 5 considerable black color on the boundaries of the object. 1 sub 6 white color is noticed on the object. 2 sub 1 object is of great color and moves at the speed of the bird. 2 sub 2 if it's a bird then the speed is high. 2 sub 3 moves swiftly. 2 sub 4 I have never seen the bird such coloration, etc. So from the considered example, it's obvious that the suggested semantic pH network is semantic organization of dynamic data structure that includes blocks which correspond to changeable in real-time object or notion and bounds that indicate temporal interconnection between blocks. By analogy with known approaches of formation and storage of information about the object in the form of complex packages called frames in the suggested structure of semantic network, information about the object is stored in hierarchically organized frames. Each frame is described by its functional role. For instance, for the considering example on the second figure, the frames are formed from such blocks of the network. First frame, second frame, third frame, and final information about the object is stored in tail blocks of frames. For our example, 2 sub 1, 3 sub 1, 4 sub 1. One of the central ideas of this article is realization of such statement. How is real time can the redundancy of a multi-stage structure, for instance, neural network, can be optimized on the level of its inter-elements bonds? The answer to this question can be the suggested concept of multi-stage network. Formation of multi-stage network assumes the process of serial information transformation of correlated space areas and creation of decorrelated in time element of physical environment, while its transition from one stable state into another. Thank you for your attention.